Good evening, Mr. Powers. Mr. Bigglesworth has gone away. Hello, everybody. Sorry, this is me being weird. Is the camera okay? Everybody's happy with the positioning of the camera. You can see the disc, and you can see whatever I'm doing. I mean, it's not the first time I've been bitten, so I could just be this little picture down. So yeah. No. Okay, so welcome to the foam smithing workshop. Hope everybody is doing well on this cold evening. which is very bad because the one window in my workshop doesn't close, so there's cold air coming in. So yay! Okay. First thing I want to talk about is foam smithing. I know stuff it's become a fairly easy thing to actually get into. I mean, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of videos on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and all the other things, TikTok and whatever, and this is why I've never actually made myself a channel. But hey, I'm here to impart my knowledge upon thine people. This is a session of love, session of health, a session of happiness. Okay, firstly, what I'm going to get started with most of the questions I get asked about foam smithing and how to get into it, and how do you know what foam to use and what glue to use and how do you do this and how do you do that. Basic I can tell you is before you touch your foam, just or even just do stuff with your foam, decide what you're doing. Are you looking for it to be durable? Are you looking for it to be something that's not going to break easily? I mean, I've thought about these things. I've made things from 10 years ago and I still have them. They need touch-ups here and there, but usually it's something that I have, and it's in the storage, and storage treats it well. So there is a few things with foam you will have to know. There are a few different types of foam that I personally have used, and I found my favorites, and I found easy access to certain foams that, if you are in a sticky wicket and you need to get something done like urgently, and you really need foam, and I'm blathering on. There's places you can get foam. Firstly, initially my place I go to first is Sondor. And people always ask, with Sondor, what is the recommended foam that you can get that you like to use? And I generally go with SPX foam. And then of course it has its different densities. And if you're going for like a general floor mat like this, actually, this is basically a key floor mat that I got from Crazy Plastics or Westpac. They usually have these. They call them puzzle mats. So if you go there and ask them for foam puzzle mats, they generally know what you're asking, because I've gone in there and I've asked for EVA foam, and they don't know what I'm talking about. So generally, puzzle mats is what they call it. This is the 8mm puzzle mat that I usually use, and this is if you're making something that has a lot of like I said, a lot of form to it, a lot of different folded areas and stuff, but not like geometrical folded areas, that's kind of like sort of like squared off, more of a rounded and easier and it's much easier to flex, because this is very flexible. So if you make something that has a lot of curves, a lot of movement, a lot of angles you need to bend the foam to actually adhere to, because the foam is a very forgiving material to use. So I usually use this if I'm making something like a bracer, the little thing that goes around your wrist. If I need to make a bracelet, if I need to make a headband or something, I would usually use something like this. Of course, you've got your thinner ones. They also sell these in in packs of, I think it's like packs of 10. It's your 1 millimeter foam, and I actually found this to be very, very helpful with my detailing. And in a pinch, I lay these together, and I have my thickness of foam that I need, and they generally work out. And I also use these to essentially keep my shapes. Like for instance, I've made something recently that needs to keep shape, and it's this. You can see this has got a lot of shape to it. So essentially, this piece was flat. This was a very flat piece, and in the back of it, I have glued a piece of 1 millimeter foam to it, just so it actually keeps its shape. And I will talk about this a little more later. But now going back to the foam, except this is very nice for your flexible stuff. This is your other EVA foam mats. Like I said, we call them children's puzzle mats. So also in the back, it's got this texture. I don't know if you can see the texture, yeah, but it's got this little texture in the back. I like using this as well if you're doing sort of like a like dystopian, everything's gone crap thing, or even like I know I've seen people use this side of the foam for Mass Effect armor. Mass Effect armor is insane. I love it, and I will actually make myself Mass Effect armor one day. But no, I love using this, especially if I'm doing like a otherworldly, like dystopian wasteland sort of thing. Wasteland, that's what I'm looking for. Wasteland sort of armor. It actually gives it a very nice texture, and there's actually no need to really prime this side, because it's got a shiny edge to it as well. All you would have to do is just give this a light sanding so the paint can actually adhere to it. Otherwise, if you don't, the paint will just, once it's on, the paint will start just peeling off, which is not good, which is something that you don't want. And then you've got this. This is something I used. It's a piece of something I used about 5 years ago. I made weapons out of these things for a few of my commissions. This is what they call SPX 200. This is basically, it's a piece of board. It's like a piece of board almost. It is very difficult to flex. You can flex it. It just takes a bit to actually flex. But you can, with the manipulation of this will not lose its shape. This, on the other hand, if you heat it up, there's always a chance that it might lose its shape. But this stuff I get from Sandor. This is SPX 200. They sell them same as all their rolls of foam. They sell them in sheets of 1 millimeter by 2 millimeter sheets. So this is going to be, if you want something that's going to be hard and something that you need to be durable. For instance, LARP stuff. I've used this for LARP shields, LARP swords, and it does get damaged because LARPing, and stuff, will get damaged. But other than that, it keeps its shape and it keeps its hardness. So, I mean, hearing that compared to that, a world of difference. But like I said, it depends on what you're making. That's the density you're going for, and you get them in. I usually go from 40 up. But you can get them in 30s, but the 30s is more like it feels more like a memory foam than anything, and it doesn't really keep its shape. Excuse me. So with that as well, few tools I do use. You've got your cutting knives. That's like your general cutting knife, and then that is your little detail knife. I love this thing. It's actually what I use mostly. This I used to just cut big pieces out. This is the 90% of when I work. That is what I use, and this has saved me more times than I can tell you. Along with that, what I always suggest is if you're doing something that is symmetrical, essentially, you've got your halo guns, your Helldiver stuff. You got something that needs to have a basic, a firm shape to it. So what you would do, what I always start with when I'm patterning, a piece of cardboard. Cardboard is very, very forgiving as well. It takes a while to learn how to work with it, but I've made starting off, when I started cosplay, this was everything that I used. I used cardboard to make everything. Cardboard, paper, and kids' water glue that you use like in preschools. That was the three things I used to make my armor pieces, and I learned so much from making that, and it was just an amazing experience, and I will always remember it. But for instance, this, what you do is, because it's, if you look at the thickness, it doesn't have like your 10 millimeter thickness, but because it's got a nice thickness here, you can stack them together as well. For instance, like that. That is now, that you're looking at about 5 mils. And if you stack another piece on it, that'll be your 10. So basically, you're getting the same result as you would use with foam, but just with something that's a little more porous, it's a little more hard. But this is a fantastic tool to start planning with, and then from there, you take them apart and you can use the same patterns for your foam. Also, when I'm doing my little cuts with this knife, I've got my tiny cutting mat. I've got my big one, but then I've got my tiny one, because my tiny one I don't use as much. I use it more for detailing, so it's a much cleaner mat, and the knife doesn't get caught in the little ridges and everything, because of course it's not used that much. And I know they say they're self-healing and stuff, yes, but to the point where I've had this mat for about 10 years now. It gets to the point where it starts breaking, so I need to get a new one. Okay. So that is a few of the cutting tools I use. What I also like to use, just regular pair of scissors, just to clip off the, you've got your little edges here. I don't know if you can see, like your little individual little scrappy bits that's on the end. Just a little clip, and it works, and then it makes it look a lot neater. And also, when you're making stuff with your cardboard, I know I'm jumping everywhere. Just guys, let me know if you guys get lost. I do apologize. I've got my little roller tape, so that as well helps me hold pieces together, and it helps me hold my pieces of foam together, so I make sure I've got the right angles. You can use that. You can use masking tape. You can use duct tape, but duct tape's a little more aggressive, so it holds on a little bit tighter. So generally, when you pull it off, it leaves this porous, like this rough edge on your foam. So if you want something that's going to be smooth, you unfortunately will not get such a smooth surface. And then I've got my glues I use. Contact. Okay, that's slowing down. Okay, I'm back. I don't know why the stream is slowing down. Hello? I think I'm good. No, I don't know why it's struggling. I can see from my side as well that it's struggling a bit. Okay, I think I'm okay. Might have to move a bit slower. Yeah, no, the stream is breaking up. I might have to. Sorry guys, that's a pretty technical difficulty. I might have to try and switch. Unless it's working now. Are you working now? Yes, you're working now. Stupid stream. See, when I sit down, it does. It's doing nonsense when I'm sitting down. Oh, it might too close, maybe. Maybe that side. Okay, I think I'm good. I think I'm okay. I think we are rolling and we are doing things. Okay, cool. It's all good. All right. Sorry, guys. Sorry about that. Like I said, I use contact, and I like putting it in a little squeeze bottle. It makes it a much easier distribution when you are doing your edges and everything. And then I've also got for my little attachments. I've got my what do you call this? My super glue. Sorry, I lost the name. I got my super glue. Thank you very much. I've got super glue as well for my little details, and usually it's a little dot And it's one of those things that sticks instantly, so you just gotta be really, really, really careful with it. Otherwise, you're gonna have a whole thing. And then tools-wise, electric tools, what I like to use, I never had these back in the day. I've got my heat gun, and then I've got my Dremel. So with my Dremel, I've made myself a little thing. So I'd actually like to thank Roxy Bear for this thing, because she actually turned me onto this. It's a little tool thing I made with just little holes in a block of wood that I made, that houses all my bits. So yeah, so it's got all my little bits in there, and it's got my little tool in there, so I can switch them out. One thing I like about this bit, I've been using this bit now for about, I think you can see it, for about 2 years now, and it's actually very smooth now. It's gone to the point where the bit is actually super smooth. So I like to use that on my edges of my foam when I'm trying to glue them together and such. There are a few things I will show you on how to on when I glue and stuff to make you essentially seamless, to make your edges essentially not have a seam at all, without using fillers and foam clay, you know, that sort of thing. And yeah, and okay, so let me dive in. First thing I want to show you guys is the method I use when I'm gluing. Okay, I've got a little piece of foam here. So basically what I'm going to do is cut it in half, and also it depends on your angle. You've got to make sure these things are very sharp. So what I like to do is I keep a piece of, find it. Oh, there it is. I keep a piece of, no, that one is that. There we go. It is 150 grit sandpaper. I like to keep this next to me while I'm crafting. So literally, it's a few, and then believe me, I've done this, and I've sliced my thumb, and it's not fun because this goes through foam like butter, so it goes through skin like anything else. So just be very careful once you've sharpened it, because it can really, really hurt you. So what I'm going to do is now I'll show you just a foam glue up that I'm going to do. So I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to cut it at a bit of an angle, and then the method I've used to glue, the foam rips before the glue will come off, basically. So that's what that's the few things that I've learned. So basically, I'm going to use about a 45-degree angle, like a 30-45 degree angle here, and just use. So once I've done this, oh sorry, let me get this on camera. Here we go. So once it's in, as you can see, it's going to be a in and a slice, and because I've sharpened it, it actually gives such a clean, and if you can see, such a clean edge to actually glue. And that's why I say just be very careful once you've done this. It can really, really hurt you. So I'm going to do the same on the other side. And again, that is a clean cut. That is totally clean. And I've got a 30 on the one side and then a 45 on the other side. It's a very slight difference between the two, but you'll definitely see the different angles. Now, my method of actually gluing, I like to call it double glue. And I know on bottles and stuff they always tell you, oh wait a few minutes while the contact glue is drying. In my experience, no, because once you wait that long, just wait till it's tacky. Usually, for me, it's about 10 seconds of doing this. Actually, no, it's about 5 seconds of doing this after I put the glue on. That the glue is tacky and it's ready to be glued, or ready for a second layer. So basically, what I do is, once the glue is on, and that's the thing, I don't use a lot. I just use a dollop. Right, they just stay on the corner, and I can actually do both pieces twice each. So basically, what I want to do is also I want to flip the edges of the foam that's going to be sticking out. I want to flip them out, because a lot of the times when you do this, you crush the tips of the foam. So basically, what I'm doing is doing that. And then also with this, I'm just going to give it a little flick because this is going to be where it's going to show. So that's going to be flicked out like that because that can always fall back in on itself. So I'm just going to give it a little glue here. And as you can see, my glue is not thick on there. It's actually quite a thin layer of glue. So with this, I'm gonna, and like I can immediately go to this next one. Literally like 3 to 5 seconds of doing this, and that is now tacky. And I put my second layer on. So just rub the second layer on, make sure that it's going to the edges so you can actually glue them up nicely. So once it's on the edges there, this one as well, make sure that it's on the edges there. And see, I didn't even flap this one. By the time I got here, this was already ready to be glued again. So that's why I also call the double glue. And then I'm flying, Mom, I'm flying. So what basically what's going to happen is, let me do it on this side. This is what's going to happen is, you're going to match your edges. You're going to match your edges. The top edge here. Okay, now let me do it like this, makes it easier. There's 2 edges here, so you're going to match them up. Okay, depending on where you are, and you're just going to touch the edges. You're going to touch them up nicely. Okay, and once you've touched those edges, use your finger and just rub the top. Because you now flap those 2 pieces out, when you do your glue and you rub your finger on the top, that essentially it seals your edge without using any filling. And then once you've glued them together, you stick them nicely. Okay, like I said, you rub the top of your edge here, and then we do this. Okay, essentially you can also just pick a little bit of excess contact glue off. Also makes it nice and clean. And then that edge is glued and it looks like it's in one piece. I've had a hard time figuring that one out. And look at this, because I'm trying to pull it apart and nothing. This will, like I said, your foam will rip before your glue will let go, which is great. And also after that, you can take also a piece of sandpaper, just 150 grit sandpaper, okay, and then just you give it a bit of a sanding. Right, that's sanded down. See, no edge spilling. So that essentially, that's become a seamless piece. And when you put your primer on and you paint it, nothing, no edges. Once you've done it with the 150, I like to grab a bit of, I think this is I think it was about 360. Got about 360 here, and I'll show you a piece I did with this exact method. People don't talk about this a lot, and I noticed that they don't. It's something called wet sanding. They usually talk about it in like in model making, 3D printing, whatever. But nobody knows that not a lot of people realize that you can actually wet sand foam. So what I like to do is I've got this little spray bottle. Was one of Kayla's old makeup sprays. So I fill it with water, just a quick spritz on there. And because it's got the spritz on there, essentially you can now wet sand it. So when you wet sand, you can actually see the pieces of foam start coming off, like your little scrappy bits. So essentially they're coming off. So I've now sanded now with the 150, and I go straight into my 380. Okay, because of that, again, once it's dry, no seam. It looks like I just curved this thing over. There's no seam there, and I think that will work it out. I've done it. Let me move some of the stuff away because now I've noticed I do that, and then my workspace gets full. So now that I've done that, I've actually got a seamless piece. and I've done the same with this. It was supposed to be like a canteen that I've made. I still have to put the top on and all the things. This piece is actually about 10 pieces of foam that I worked out the angle with the cardboard method that I showed you, that I spoke about. Like I said, once you've got it in cardboard and you have your angles, you can go straight into your foam once you've taken that out, and you can use that for pattering. That bottom lip over here, I haven't sanded yet, but all these I've sanded, so it actually looks like one cohesive piece of foam that I've used, and I have sanded down. I still have to get this as nice and smooth as I'd like, but I sanded this down, and it's just. I'm so happy with the way this came out, because you can't see any seams. It's totally seamless. So the other thing I want to talk about as well with your bits. Sorry, I had to pick up my camera. I used my very fine sanding bit for this, as well as just to help. But what I like to use is this. Is it that one? Yes, it is. I like to use this. This you get in some Dremel kits. It's essentially a stone sanding bit. It's totally smooth. It feels like a tile, but it's completely smooth. I like using this. So with this, what you do is once you got it locked in. Sorry guys, be a bit of noise. You put it on. You're gonna put some like a medium speed-ish, and you're gonna go slow. Now, once I've done that, I can take my water again, give it a quick spritz, and again with my very fine sandpaper. And you're not going to go up and down like this. You're just going to essentially, what you're doing is you're scraping off in a way. You're scraping off and making sure everything is level. And once you know everything is level, that piece is smooth like a baby's butt. It is so smooth, and you can't feel any foam, any what do you call it? Any furry bits on the foam. You know, when you heat up foam, you know you get your furry bits and whatever it is, but you don't feel anything. And even the heat gun won't pick up the foam or won't pick up the furry bits on that piece again. It'll be completely flat. It will be nice and smooth. So that is more or less gluing foam, and my double, or what I like is the double gluing method, which is something that I worked on, and it helped me through the whole thing. I don't know where I actually learned the double gluing method, but yeah, that's what I like to use when I'm doing that. With your heat gun, a lot of tutorials don't talk about this, and they forget to mention when you are making stuff. Foam has got these little pockets, these little porty pockets in it. That's why if you don't prime it, if you don't heat seal it and then you don't prime it, you're going to get these little pockets on your piece of foam that you can still see. Even after it's painted, you will still see these little pockets of foam, which suck. I've done that before, and I've lost my mind because I didn't know what I was doing. And then you discover you have to heat seal it, which seals up the foam, because right now it gives it it's like a matty kind of color. So once you heat seal it, and I like to use my heat gun on a high heat because I'm extreme that way. So what you can do is, once you do this, if you notice, the foam changes. Once you heat up, the foam will change. And what I like about this is, once once you heated it up, you see the foam has this shiny bit on it, which means now everything is heat sealed. You can even rub your finger on it and you can feel that it's smooth. It's totally and completely heat sealed. And yes, there's certain foam like this one, for instance. This one I've noticed when you heat it too much, because it's not as tough. It's not as tough as this one, it actually leaves little bumps on your foam. So sometimes you don't want to hold it too close, you don't want to hold it too near. And it also depends on the texture you want to get. Textures I'll talk about, if I've got time, I'll talk about that. If not, I'll talk about it in another tutorial as well. But heat sealing is one of the things I learned was very, very, very essential. And also, once it cools, it helps you keep your shape. Completely and utterly, it helps you keep your shape. And yeah, that's one of the things I like to do with my foam. I like to heat seal it before I prime it, before I paint it. And I know these days there are a lot of primers out there, and I know I'm trying to hop through a bunch of things. Hairdryer is nice, but the hairdryer, I notice it doesn't seal the foam as best as it could. Hairdryer I like to use if I'm sealing, if I want to dry paint faster, and also with that you have to be very careful. If I want to dry my paint faster, if I want to dry my primer faster, that is the thing I want to show you next. I know I'm hopping through a lot of information here, guys. Just let me know if I need to slow down or if I need to go back to anything. And I will take questions at the end of everything. Okay, hair dryer. This is specifically the one I like to use. This is the one that stays in the craft room. This is the one that doesn't leave. So like I said, with this, see, now that I've heat sealed it and it's all thingy, it's all shiny, what I like to do is I've got my this is one brush I use for all my priming, because I don't like hopping through my brushes unless I absolutely have to. This is not a pot of garlic. It says garlic on it, but don't eat it. This is my wood glue. But this is wood glue. You water it down, and once you water it down, the consistency you're looking for is essentially this. It's like dripping. It's the consistency of milk. Because a lot of people, what they do is they take the primer directly from the wood glue bottle and put it on the foam parts or any parts that move when you're priming. And the problem with that is because it's straight wood glue. Because wood glue gets very hard when it dries, essentially you get cracks. And I know everybody has a heart attack when you get a crack in your foam armor or your foam piece, and it's because the wood glue is too porous. It's too abrasive. It's too hard when it dries. So that's why you water it down with water. Of course, you water it down with water, but you water it down to get a milky consistency, and then when you put it on, it actually slides smooth. And it might not look, the first layer is gonna upset you because it's not gonna look like it's doing anything. But because it's water, it goes on much finer, it goes on much thicker, and it actually soaks into the foam nicely as well. And there's actually a less chance that you're gonna get brush marks. So essentially what you can do is you can do this. And I like to use a minimum of 3 coats of the wood glue primer before I even start my painting. And between each primer, with the fine sanding paper, you give it a sand. Give it a sand. It makes a world of difference. Even after your third layer, you give the third layer a sand before you do your first priming of your black or whatever it is you use to prime your foam. So what I'm doing is I'm actually keeping it far away, because if you keep it too close, it can actually burn the primer, and then you've got little spots and stuff on your foam. And just wait for that to cool, and you can already see the difference between the, you see like the prime side and the non-prime side. So you can go again. I like to go second coat, and see the second coat's actually going on smoother, and then you notice how it builds up. As you can see, I have to dip my brush an extra time because now the primer has built up. It is going to be a bit more difficult to add the primer, but after you add the primer and then you give it a bit of a light brush, sort of get rid of those textures, the brush stroke textures that you don't want in your stuff. Again. Okay, that is completely dry, and you can see the difference. Primed, not primed. You can actually notice the difference between the two spots. And then once again, my last coat is that I like doing 3, like a minimum of 3, because the minimum of 3 is just it just works out a lot better, in my opinion. Also, it covers up all your registration marks, all like your inking bits and your markers and stuff. It covers up that, so you don't have that sort of showing through your foam once you've painted it. This as well. Okay, and I'll show you real quick. It hasn't dried totally yet. Right, what I like is I haven't dried this part totally yet. So what I like to do is, if there is a bit of texture I like, if there's a certain kind of like rusty, rough sort of texture I like to have on my foam, what I like to do is, let me just plug this back in. I like to do this. My heat gun on high, but the heat gun's going to go close. So I'll show you I'm going to show you what's going to happen if you use your heat gun to dry, but you don't keep a nice safe distance away. Because I've done this a million times. I've done this, and I've been so unhappy when I did it. It does dry it quite faster, but if I hold it too close, on the top. If I hold it too close, unfortunately, that's what it's done. It's burnt the primer, it's burnt the foam. But this actually works out nicely if you have like a like I said, like a wasteland dystopian kind of armor, or like rough broken textures. If you're doing, for instance, tree bark. You know, tree bark has got its tree bark has got its very rough kind of textures. You can even hear. That's because I held the glue gun too close, as opposed to that. So that is your things that actually it actually melts your foam. But the primer is dry. But look, this is what I'm talking about. This doesn't crack. It creases, but it doesn't crack. And then with the crease, I don't know if this is going to work because I have now burnt it. I hope it does. But usually with the creases, you heat this up, you heat up the back. Once you've done that, the creases are gone. So essentially, you've gotten about back to about, I would say about 85-90% of what your piece looked like, because now the creases are gone. But because you've made those thin layers, and because those thin layers have now left it a bit flexible, it does crease, but it doesn't crack. Cracking in your foam is something that I've done, and I've cried about it because it cracks at the con, which is very, very, very upsetting. but yeah, and I like to use my little foam offcuts as well, my glue, and I like to cut them at about a 45-degree angle, and just to make sure that everything is, glides on nice and smooth. And like I said, I use my double glue method. If you are strapped and you've only got, for instance, one piece of foam, in the time of that, I want to show you guys a little something else, something that I learned to do, as coming up, and you don't really have a lot of foam that you can spare. So what I like to do is, if I've got, I'm just going to draw a quick thing. So if I've got, let's say I want to make a little, let's square this off. And this knife is still very sharp. And that's nice because you don't have to do it after every cut. You can do it after every 10 cuts. And it'll actually work out really nicely. And it's still smooth as hell. Okay, so what I like to do is, you can actually build a lot of stuff from one piece of foam. It just depends on how you do it. So if I want to, for instance, make a panel, so I'll draw my little square on. Right, I'll draw my little square PC on here. So then I take my little knife and give it a bit of a sharpen. And you dig in. And what I like to do is, I like to wiggle my knife in until I feel the bottom of the mat, and then slowly pull through. Because it makes your edge a good edge. And then also, I'll also talk about how to get your edges sort of perfectly square as well. So I've got my little thingy there. Now you notice I can't pull my knife out of that, because going across, I can't pull my knife out of that. So what I like to do is, I like to go from the middle and pull it towards the end. But right before I hit the end, I'll stop. And do the same thing on the other side. So basically what I've done is, I've pulled the knife from the center up to that end, but I don't cross my line here. So what I do is, I go again from the edge, from this edge here. I'll go with my knife again, this edge here, to make sure everything is square. And just wiggle my knife in again. This is actually very scary because you don't know if you're going to have the best cut. But again, this is going to be on the inside, so no one's going to see it. Now what you do is, you just, and then it actually comes out nice and square, and then you've got a nice square in there, no damage, no overflap of the foam or anything like that. So with this piece, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to take a big knife because it's got a long blade, and then give it a bit of a trim. Right? So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to give it a bit of a trim. Just be very careful with this, especially on smaller pieces. So, right, I've given it like a little bit of a bevel. Oh shit, right? A tiny bit of a bevel there, I've given it. So what I like to do is, for this, I don't use my contact. For this, I use my super glue because it makes it easier, because it is a much smaller surface. And just a little bit of dipping of the glue. Sorry guys, technical issues, sorry. So because my super glue has now failed me, I've got to use contact. Dab of contact glue, like a little bit of a dab, and then I cut this piece of foam. I cut into a triangle shape. Makes it easy for me to do that. This I don't really worry about the double glue. I generally use it as a single glue because it makes it easier. Because it's not such an intricate piece. Okay, I'm holding. We're back? Oh no, seriously? See, I like to just use a little bit in the corner to make sure I hit all the corners of this piece, like this. So I've got everywhere in the corners here, around the edges. So like I say, foam is actually a very forgiving thing. So what you can do is, I'll flap, 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 and then literally take this piece, glue it in. Don't glue it in connecting to the bottom so it's flush. If you glue it a little bit down and you press it in, because you've now pressed this in and it's a little bit down, your flat piece has a bit of a dimension in it. And with that as well, you can do this with a lot of stuff. If you need a square piece. So I'm just gonna hand draw a square piece. It's gonna be terrible. Don't laugh. Little square pieces. So if you want a little square paneling thing in here, yeah, a little square paneling thing in there. With a little knife again. I'm gonna use my little knife for these things because it is in your control. And then what I like to do is I like to hold my foam up like this with the little knife. Make sure I've pierced through and essentially saw through your gaps, just to make sure that everything is cut out neatly and cut out correctly. You do that, do that, do that. And essentially you pop it up. Okay, now you've got your thing here, but you've got your extra bit here. So what you want to do is, the side you want to, of course, show out. What I like to do is I like to give it a bit of a bevel, each end. And take my knife, cut it at 30, 45 degree, however you want to do it. And then, right, I've got my little edges on there. And what you can do is, when you push it back in, of course you got to get it the right way. When you push it back in, you can decide on the depth. You can either have it up like this, and then you super glue it in, so it looks like a button, or you can sink it in a little bit further, so it looks like it's a little piece of that's actually stuck in there, like a little bit of depth. You super glue around the bottom, and once that piece is in there, it stays, and then it's got it, and then it looks like a little button. Looks like a little button that you have on a piece of armor, a piece of whatever. And also with your pieces, you don't want it to be that of them, you don't want it to be very characters that's got armor and stuff on it. You don't want it to be what's the word I'm looking for? Essentially two-dimensional. So you don't want it to be flat. Can you hear me now? Hello, can you hear me? Okay, cool. Perfect. Yay! So, for instance, if you have a character that is a robot or anything like that. And you don't want it to be two-dimensional. You don't want the pieces to be flat. I mean, even with this robot, this is still flat. Because I mean I've got my angles on it, but it's still actually a bit flat. But that's because of the artwork. That's exactly how the artwork is. So essentially, what that is, you've got to figure out your little angles. Like if this thing was sort of like just flat, sharp edged, like this. If this little piece was flat edged and was just like this, just like a little, it doesn't really. It looks nice. It looks nice and neat, but it doesn't really give you anything. If you're looking to do like an OC, just think of like what the character and stuff would be like. So that's why with this, I get with the canteen, I didn't want it to be just a. That's why it's got like a boom, boom, boom. It's got essentially its own life. It's got its own angle to it, which I like. Like I said, this was in 10 pieces. This is from 10 pieces to one piece. That's a single piece. That's a single piece. That's a single piece. So yeah, you just wanted to give it something, you know. Even like with this, you didn't even have to glue these on straight. You could have glued these on like this is still loose. So I can decide that I want it to be at this button to be at like an angle. So it looks like so. For instance, it looks like it's on. And if you had an on and off thing there, so now it looks like it's on. You know, and then also detailing with your phone. Detailing with your phone as well is actually an essential thing. Like again, I'm going to refer to this piece. This is actually the only piece I've got out currently. Like that on the top here, the little graty pieces here. That is essentially just lines I cut into the foam. That's one piece of foam. Lines I cut into it and then just heat gunned it and opened it. But the issue is with that, a lot of times people go too deep with the cut. So what I like to do is once I've got my angles on here, I'm just going to draw a little thingy. Usually when you've got your angles on, okay, decide on your blade how long, how deep you want to go. Me personally, I can eyeball it, but give me a second. If you've got a piece of masking tape, and like do just a tiny piece, so rip it off. Just put it down and you cut a piece from it. I decide I want to go, about that deep with my knife. So what I'll do is I will decide I'm going to go that deep. So I'll stick it on, and then I know that is as far with the knife as I'm going. So now I know that's going to be my depth that I'm going to go. And I'm not going to go any deeper than that, because especially with like depends on the thickness of your foam as well. Then you can also decide if you want to do that. So then I'll put it in. So make sure the knife's sharp. Do it, and then you pull across gently, just to make sure that you're going the same depth. Essentially, even if you want to use it like a little saw, and just up and down, take your time, don't rush. Okay. Okay, now that I've done that, I've cut out my little thingies here, so little angles, and this is basically all these slots are actually open. So what I'll do is I'll take my heat gun. It's plugged in, sorry guys. Essentially is my heat gun. And then I'm going to do this. little bit of heat, very tiny bit of heat, far away. It doesn't even need to be on for that long. That's why you got to swing it from side to side. It'll give it the even heat distribution, and essentially open those cuts in that foam. So what I did here is, I'll show you actually, I'm going to freehand a piece and I'll show you what it should actually look like. So essentially, you've got your cut. Here you can't really see anything, but there's actually a cut here. And then once you heat it, and I've got my heat gun stuck. Oh great, I want to show people that now start doing it. Oh, there we go. It takes a while. Let me see. If you don't make it, the cuts deep enough, or you make them too deep. Like for instance, I've made the cut too deep, so now I've gotten that. But essentially, what you want is, you want this. So now you see the foam is actually open there, and that's a little bit you can actually just use for detail. So if you've got cuts, I've used it for if I want to put roughly writing. Like when I did my like my Stormbreaker hammer, like Thor's hammer. There's little writing, there's glyphs and stuff on the actual face of the hammer. All I did was I took my knife and I made a mark of how deep I needed to go, and then I just did little incisions at different angles, and that essentially gave me what I needed. So actually, better to see it better on this piece. So what I'll do is just little bits. So it's just little things that you do. You just gotta be very careful when you do it. So now again, with the heat gun, and as you can see, it's come out a lot neater. That is essentially what I like to call heat gun scribing. I don't know what the word is, but as you can see, just from little cuts, they opened and they sealed very nicely. So it actually is a very useful tip. And even if I do this, even if I mess with the foam, like I'm rubbing the foam, and it's there. Once it's in, it's in. And then like I said, just the only thing you got to do is just be very, very careful when you do this. Take your time, make sure that your blade is actually very sharp. And because your blade is sharp, it'll hold up nicely. I'm trying to think what else should I show you. There's little things like if you run out of like I know we don't really get foam dowels here. There is a trick that I learned. If I can find a piece of foam, I can show you. There is a little trick I learned. Making, like I had to make my own foam dowel. Essentially what it is this. Let me just move all this stuff out of the way, all this nonsense. You got your ruler. You got your ruler up here. All right, just a little piece. I'm going to show you. So that. And this might seem a little weird at first, but it's this piece. I'm just going to make a tiny little foam dowel from this because I needed it. I was making bullets for a certain project, and I needed round dowels, and I didn't want them to be too heavy or anything. So this is what I used. Here's you're going to take your contact. Okay, this time you're going to do the top and the bottom of your foam, so both sides of the foam. Okay, so you're going to do this. Just make sure it goes all the way to the end, all the way here. All right, let that dry a bit, and then you're going to do the opposite side of the foam as well. It's going to feel terrible doing this at first, and you're going to think it might not stick, but believe me, it works. And you're just going to pull it off. Let both of them dry. And then you're going to go again one more time on the first side that you put the contact. First side of the contact, so you can do this. Okay, essentially there's that. Now you've gotten both sides of glued. Yeah, the one of your sides might get a bit messy, so yes, that's what we're going to call it from now on, the cosplay flappy. Right, so don't need that piece. So now it's now tacky on both sides. Essentially what you can do is, you can do this very slowly. You're going to flip your initial side over like this, and then you're going to roll slowly. You're going to roll it. Doesn't matter if the edges are a bit weird, you can always cut those off. So always cut them a bit bigger than you want them. Essentially is that, and then you're going to roll. Roll. And yes, mine came out more of a croissant than anything. But if I take my knife, cut it down the center, cut it down here, cut those edges off. It does not look like separate pieces. That is essentially, I've made a little foam dowel for myself. Now you can do this with a longer piece as well, with a wider piece. And just with those pieces, it becomes more difficult to do. This is what I had to learn to do when I had to make these little bullets and stuff. And because it's been contacted glue on both sides, it holds the shape, and then that's your little bud. And then what you can do is also, if you want it on a flatter surface, split it down the middle, and then you glue it down on your flat surface, like that. So if you glue it down on your flat surface, let me actually do that so I can show you. But like with this, you are going to need the, you will have to use the double glue. Because with the double glue, yes it is. With the double glue, it's going to actually hold better. Essentially, you're going to do that. You're going to do this. Okay. And guys, just let me know if I'm going way past my time. I'm very bad at looking at time. Essentially, going to do this and this. Because I know foam dowels are one of those things that is actually difficult to get here. Well, in my experience anyway. If anybody knows any place, that would be great. Not tacky yet. No, that's cool. You can definitely ask questions if we've got time. Cool. Then you just glue it down onto your piece there. Then once it's on, because you've double glued, I said the foam will rip before your glue will come off. And essentially, you've got a little button on top of your piece, whatever it is. You can even use this. I've used this on helmets. I've used this on armor. It's just little basic stuff that you can use. You've got to kind of think out of the box. Actually, you've got to not think out of the box. You've got to think in the box, out the box, around the box, within the box. You have to be the box and think of what you can be. Foam is a very, like I said, it's a very flexible, it's a very forgiving, material to use. But yeah, that's just a few things I learned. I mean, I'm sure we'll be doing more of these, and then this is basically like an introductory. So it'll be, if we do another one, maybe there's ones we can do on textures. Maybe there's ones you want to know on painting. You know, these specific ones. You know, we might do more of these because it's actually really fun. Yeah. So just yeah. If there's anything you guys want to know, I think if Leon, if we've got time, maybe we take a couple of questions, because I think I've spoken quite enough right now. And yeah, just want to know if anybody has any questions, and if I missed anything, if you guys had any thoughts, let me know. The floor is yours. Questions? Questions? No, I can't see the questions. Yeah, you could read it out to me.
Okay, no worries. So Cat and Ice wants to know how to make foam maintain a cylinder shape for like leg armor. Is that something you'll probably need the high density foam that you mentioned?
If it's maintaining a cylinder shape, not necessarily. If you can get yourself, if you can get your hands on even if it's the floor mats, the kids playing floor mats. What you can do is essentially you will have your cylinder. So what you do is you'll have your PC. So you can make a cylinder, right? Your cylinder will be that essentially. Just gotta manipulate it so it actually stays. But no, your cylinder will be that, because I did this with my with my little Mario bullet ball build. So what you do is you've got your little cylinder there. Inside your cylinder, what I've always found actually helps to keep it shaped is if you, once you've got your cylinder and your little diameter of your cylinder, cut circles, cut foam circles, or actually glue pieces of cardboard together that fit inside your cylinder, but will fit inside flat ways. Like, for instance, if it is perfect thing. So if your foam cylinder is like that, you will cut a few circles that are the diameter of the inside of your tube, and once it's kept in its shape like that, you slot them inside, but you slot them vertically inside, and that will actually hold the structure on the inside of your cylinder. And just to keep them in, you can just dab a bit of hot glue in there, and then it'll actually keep it, and it holds the shape of your cylinder. I don't know if that if you got that, if that answers your question.
If I can add something, also using a heat gun on the foam will make it easier to manipulate the shape.
Yeah. I just and that's the thing. Like I've learned with this stuff. I've learned it so much. I've learned it so well that I use a heat gun if I'm getting intense shapes. But generally for like cylinders and for like other rounder shapes, I barely use a heat gun, because I try not to use the very, very high density foam. If I'm using the very high density foam, like I showed you, like this, I will use a heat gun, because the stuff is very, very difficult to shape unless you have a heat gun.
Okay, cool. Then we have from Narnia. We've got two travel questions. So, how do you pack foam pieces for international travel, and do you take any tools with you when you travel to fix it?
Okay, so with the trip to Chicago, the toe caps on my shoes were actually a very, very delicate thing. I had to pack in my suitcase, and it frightened me very much. So what I did was, well, it depends on how big it is, on how big the piece is. Like for instance, if I, like when I made my Hellboy hand, my right hand of Doom, I actually made it so it split into 3 pieces, and because it was cylindrical and because it was hollow, I stuffed a bit of the clothes, because I knew I could iron the clothes again when I got there. I stuffed a bit of clothes in it so it actually maintained its shape. But with my shoe caps, they were hollow, but at the same time they were not very thick foam. So what I did was I actually made a little cardboard box that I stuffed with. I think I stuffed it with a bit of cut off polo fleece that I had and a little bit of bubble wrap, and I made sure that the box was in a position surrounded by clothes. So essentially, it had its own area it was living in, but nothing was on top of it that could crush it. And also, it did help that I did have one of those plastic suitcases. I mean, even though with traveling, they don't care that it's plastic; they throw them anyway. But the box and the bubble wrap and everything helped keep that in its actual shape. And I didn't even take a heat gun with me. We had a hairdryer that we had. There were a few creases in the piece that I took with me, but the hairdryer essentially, lack of a better word, ironed out those creases. When I got it there, I put a bit of heat to it, and then the back and the front, but very light heat, and at quite a distance, like maybe 30 centimeters, like a ruler space away. So the heat doesn't burn your paint job, neither does it damage the actual piece, but it sort of irons out the creases. So you kind of got to do it on the outside and the inside of the piece.
Okay, and then we've got a question from Earl Grey. He asks, how would one get a really polished surface finish for armor?
Like polish finish, I'm just assuming like very shiny, kind of like a Mando's armor. That's what I'm assuming.
Yeah, I'm assuming like metal armor type of thing.
Yeah, with that, okay, that is actually very difficult to get with foam. It's not impossible, but it is very, very difficult. What I found that works is that I actually got in my shapes. I made a series of Mandalorian helmets at one point, and because the Mando's helmet, it's got that gunmetal, very, very shiny sort of thing on it. So what I like to do is, like I say, after I prime it with the wood glue, and after each layer of primer, I like to do 3, but after each layer of primer, you give a good sand with a very with a very high density sandpaper. So the sandpaper looks like it's not rough at all, but do it at very high density. I'm sorry, not a very high density. Sorry, a very smooth sandpaper, and wet sand it. Wet sanding works magic. And after that, what you want to use is, it depends on your armor. If you're making it, if you're doing like a silver armor, not a silver armor like a metal looking armor. What I like to use is I like to use a flat matte black spray paint first. Again, after the spray paint is dry, this is actually a bit of a long process. But once the spray paint is dry, you sand it again, you wet sand it again, and then you use a gloss black spray paint. And then after the gloss black spray paint, you do about 2 coats of the gloss black spray paint, no sanding between, but like light coats. And then you use a clear varnish over that as well. And then you use a clear, sorry, not clear, and then you use a can of your silver spray paint. And to get your spray paint to to come out a little bit smoother than it usually comes out of the can, I would suggest leaving it in a bucket of like warm water, not hot, but warm water for about 20 minutes. And that essentially that melts whatever's in the can. It melts it and makes it more liquidy, so it comes out in a nice lighter spray. And a lot of the times when people spray paint, the mistake I found that I make, and a lot of people do make when they spray paint, they spray it as in like they hold it down and they're like shh. That essentially will leave you with clumps, and then you've got to sand again and you've got to prime again, and then it's a whole thing. What I like to do is give it a couple of coats and light coats. So essentially it's like shh, 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 shh. So essentially you're tapping the spray every time you spray across. So you're tapping the spray can. And if you feel like it's too light, like you can still see the black coming through, don't stress too much about it. Let it dry and then go again. Let it dry and then go again. It usually takes about 3 coats if you're doing it this way to cover nicely, and then you end up getting like a glossy coverage. Failing you using the spray paint, after the gloss finish that you put on after the after the satin black, the very shiny black layer, and you put your gloss on, what I suggest if you get graphite powder, and you take the graphite powder, please wear gloves when you use the graphite powder, because it will get on your fingers and then you look like you've been messing with pencils. Use a glove and use a rag that you're not going to use anymore. Dip it a bit into the graphite powder, and essentially you're going to lightly massage it into the onto the whatever piece you're doing, and that as well, that gives you that gunmetally look as well, because the graphite powder is essentially like it's silver. It's like a dark silver, so it gives you that that sort of rough, that sort of smooth edging on it as well. And then afterwards, just tap it off. You give it another coat of gloss, and you'll actually get that shiny, very bright, sort of like eye-catching armor. Is that okay?
Yes, Earl Grey says that it helps a lot because they've been having that problem with spraying lately.
Okay.
And then Bunny had a question about overseas. Did they have like a cosplay hospital, or were people only having walking medics to rely on?
Oh no, they did have a little cosplay repair section, which was great. It actually was fantastic, because they've got hot glue, they've got super glue, they've got contract glue, they've got some paint, they've got some brushes, they've got needles and thread, and they're actually very, very well stocked. I think I used it once or twice because I needed a bit of and essentially they actually have makeup as well. So if you need a bit of eyeshadow, whatever it is, it's not one eyeshadow, more like stuff you can basically use to like, for instance, like you want to do, like if you're doing Batman and you need to do like the dark smoky circles around the eyes, they've got that as well. But they do have that, and they're quite decently stocked with their repair stuff.
Okay. Does anyone have any last questions? Otherwise, we are going to release Nori back into the wild. So you can flap freely.
Listen here. I'm going to make a t-shirt that says, "Don't forget the cosplay flappy." And people can take it anywhere they want to.
Jack/JJ says that, does Nuri know how much we adore him?
Okay, that's a lie. I'm a very, very unlikable person.
You just lied in front of all of us. On camera.
I no lie. Nuri no lie. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Essentially, he is not a liar. I'm being that person because now I'm tired.
Oh, shame.
Now,
Several people are typing.
This is coming up.
Everyone says, thank you very much because you did a great job. Thank you so much for introducing everyone to foam stuff. And I'm definitely going to call you again for another workshop because it is always lovely to have you. And I'm not saying that because I'm biased.
Yes, no, yes, because me and Neon don't like each other. I did this because I wanted to tell him no. I did this because I wanted to show him the way.
Another workshop we can do is like on painting and battle damage and weathering and stuff like that.
That is something that I think will be great to do.
I'm going to write that down.
I'd like to impart my knowledge on that as well. And I do apologize, everyone, if I seem like I was running.
Okay. Okay. Weathering and battle. Okay, cool. Alright, thank you so much for your time today. It was lovely having you.
It was really lovely doing this, actually.
No, I'm really glad that you enjoyed it as well, because you are definitely one of the pillars of the cosplay community. So we need to pick your brain.
Listen, if you need to pick my brain as well, like away from this,
Oh, no, I am fully aware of my privilege to be able to do that.
What I'm saying, like, if anybody has questions that I have not addressed here, I mean, I don't know if it's allowed.
Oh, of course.
I don't know if you allow it.
Of course.
If you guys want to like message me, whatever. Yeah, if you do have questions.
I know he is a very terrifying individual, but he won't bite much.
I mean, look, I'm so horrible. Yeah. R and other dogs.
Several people are typing. Okay, cool.
How do people type?
Alright, I am going... Alright, thank you very much for the workshop. I will talk to you in a bit. Bye, everyone.
Bye.